What's going on, everyone? Just checking in with you today. Getting ready to go up to, about ready to go up to Jiu-Jitsu class. Just had a little bit of time. We're going to kill some time here. Quick ramble. I'm not going to ramble too much, but I've gotten some questions. Over the past weekend here, I just put a video out on our beginner class and just kind of the format of how that looks. And often we get to wondering, what does your first jiu-jitsu class even look like? We have people come in the gym all the time, and I'm always talking with them, talk to them about what to expect, how to, what to look for, if you want to get a gi, if you want to just come try it out, no gi, even with children and stuff. Parents are curious about bringing their kids by and saying, let me turn this down, just different things like what to expect, basically, and that's fair. Every gym's different. So first of all, I'll just say every gym is different when it comes to their format and their system. So that's important to kind of, even feel it out first. Or when you're testing out different gyms, just realize, everyone does something a little differently. And that's usually the responsibility of the gym owner / black belt or whatever kind of goes through and kind of standardizes the practice. I've never trained at any real chain gyms. I'm just kind of trying to think of this a lot of what I would consider chain gyms would be probably Gracie gyms. I'm sure there's a few more. I guess you consider Checkmat kind of a chain gym. TriStar has a couple locations, but I don't think of them as a chain gym. Although they do have, a few locations here or up there in Canada. Nearby to where I live, actually. But when I'm thinking of chain gyms, I'm thinking of mostly Gracie kind of gyms, Gracie Baja, and other kind of gyms that are pretty much everywhere. I've never trained at one of those gyms, so I don't really know how they do it. I have trained at TriStar for a little bit, and then I obviously train upstairs at the club with Trevor, and I've trained a couple other local kind of gyms around here, and some in Florida, and so I've got to see a little variety of how people do their things. And, it should always be a warm-up of some sort. That's pretty much what you're going to get. You're going to get a warm-up, you're going to get some lessons, and then you're going to get time to roll. Pretty much it. That's really what it comes down to. Now, there might be variations upon each gym and how that works, how much emphasis they put on the lesson, how much emphasis they put on the warm-up. I've already done a video about warm-ups in here, and and we can talk about that briefly, but and then you do the rolling. The rolling you should be able to do it. You should do it, especially if it's not a super beginner's class. I don't make people roll. I don't really make people roll in beginner's class at all. I really advise them to roll. I advise them to spend some time rolling. If they can get 15 to 25 minutes of rolling at least, 3 to 5-minute rounds after their class, I really think that's good. I think that's necessary. However, I do think also if it's your third class and you only know a handful of moves, barely, it could almost sometimes do worse, depending on the person, to make them or have them roll. I guess what you could do is kind of a consolation thing is you could have them do some kind of very, very miniature eco style games. Okay, you're going to try to keep your balance and this person's just going to try to knock you over and switch, very mini jiu-jitsu games, limiting the vastness of the sport. Because if you take someone who doesn't really necessarily know anything about jiu-jitsu and they're getting held down and they're getting just kind of beaten up and stuff, depending on the person, that person who might actually have really liked jiu-jitsu might quit or might not come back, say it's not my bag. And that's not jiu-jitsu's fault. I think personally that's you as a coach's fault. I think everyone can benefit from jiu-jitsu if they're kind of given it in the right order and the right dosage, okay? You got to make them at least feel a little competent in their brain, hey, I at least know some moves, so I can at least I might be getting held down, right? But I know that I'm getting held down in side control, and I know that I should be framing and shrimping and this stuff, and I know that I want to at least get my guard back if I could, things like that. And I think when you do something like that, for someone who already kind of has a general idea of how it's supposed to be played, you get a sense of fascination, rather than I'm ready to bail. This is not for me. This sucked. All I did was sweat on me and I couldn't move. Like the memes and stuff that you see on the internet. So once again, it's kind of personality style thing, but also I think it's kind of a coach's, teacher's responsibility. That's why I personally don't make anyone roll, first of all. And also I don't think that's good, because also you might have someone who has an injury. They might have an injury and they're just trying to drill. Okay. And depending on the culture of the gym, they might not want to be the one who sits down on the wall, because it might make them look weak or something. You know what I mean? And that's their own issue. That's not really anyone else's issue. That's their own issue. If something's not feeling right or not something, time on the mats is always good. So even if you're there just drilling, you don't want to push an injury that might be kind of iffy, then yeah, I don't think you should roll. But I do still think that you should go and train, and if you're not in critical condition, go and train and at least get some drilling down, some very controlled drilling. Because really all drilling is it's practice, it's reps in a very controlled, replicatable environment. Okay, something that you can rep out over and over again and tweak and adjust. And if you have a great partner, remember, a great training partner is worth their weight in gold. Okay, a great training partner is worth their weight in gold. So if you and one training partner, spend an hour drilling, that's perfect. Rather than saying, "Oh, I'm injured. I'm 40% injured. I'm gonna stay home tonight." That's another reason why I don't make people roll live ever. I just don't think that's necessarily true. We're all adults and we all can do what we want. That's just my opinion on it. So yeah, that's typically what your first jiu-jitsu thing looks like. Sorry if I'm kind of going all over the place, but it normally looks like a warm-up of some sort. Remember, that can come in all shapes and sizes. It can look like shrimping. It can look like fundamental movements, not beginner movements, fundamental movements that you'll need from white belt to black belt. Not beginner moves. So shrimping down the mat is a fundamental movement. You will use this your entire jiu-jitsu experience. Okay? You can also do 2-and-2 techniques, which I made a video all about 2-and-2 techniques and why I like those so much. Also, the lesson aspect. You can have people who spend a tiny bit of time on their lesson. You can have people who spend tons of time on their lesson. Once again, it's kind of lies within their priorities of the gym. And then finally, a little bit of live rounds where you kind of start putting the rubber to the road, which is equally as important as the drilling. I think it is equally as important. And eventually, the better you become at jiu-jitsu, I think you can even use those live rounds more as drilling rounds, Although it's not, what's the word for it? Mutual, right? You are, as a better player, able to do some of your drilling. You can hit moves that you've never done before on certain partners, and you can kind of use them as like a live simulation of trying to hit these moves, And they have this essence of timing, but not until you start developing a little bit of skill against your training partners are you able to do that. So they are still both equally important. There's things that I can do in drilling that, I'm very thankful for, fine tuning and trying to understand how to move something, or getting into a situation that I don't have a ton of experience getting to yet. And then using live rolling for, kind of polishing it up, or kind of hacking away larger pieces of discovery on the move, or perhaps even possibilities. So there's that as well. So I think they're equally important. That's kind of pretty much how classes are laid out for the most part. Specifically here, that's kind of how everything goes. So I always encourage everyone to, get in and try some jiu-jitsu out. Go to a school, try a couple of gyms out. You don't need to just try out one, because just like every gym has a style, Every student has a style as well, a style of learning. Every human individual learns a specific way. So that's no secret. Some people really prefer hands-on learning, really prefer figuring it out the old way. Now you have these, I said the old way, figuring it out the hands-on, trial by fire kind of like way. And then you also have some students who really prefer learning all the ins and outs. Like I noticed, I asked some of my beginner students, do you want me to share like the little tiny nuances? And personally, I'm kind of on the fence with this because I think you can get kind of lost and caught up in all the little details, especially if you're just learning. Like I think you should learn it, period. But when should you learn it? Should you learn it, when you're brand new? Maybe that's too much, and I try to teach in a way where it's like, well, you can see it. We just posted a lesson that I did at beginner's class, the BJJ for beginners easy X guard video. You can check that out if you want to, but I try to teach it to like just a couple little things. Like if we're learning X guard, we'll learn the position part, then we'll learn move one, and then we'll learn a what if, for example. That's basically what I did in that video. So anyways, yeah, there's so much you can do, but I really think it would be smart for you to as the student to hop around and check different places out, because you might find different things that work for you, things in different teaching styles and different things that really kind of gravitate towards you. Okay, but I really do believe that learning lessons and drilling and actually sparring, doing rolls, I think you need all of them. You truly need all of them. You're never gonna, especially as a beginner, you're never gonna be able to really progress unless you do all of those things. And that's just my opinion. Because I think they all complement each other in their own way. You have to learn, you have to know what to do, you have to practice doing it with zero stakes, so you can kind of, freely practice. And then you also have to practice when the stakes are higher, where it is crucial, so you don't skip step C of the whole sequence. Don't skip step C because this happens. You get destroyed. Now you're going to pay for this. Hope you worked on your escapes. Crap. I didn't work on my escapes and I forgot step C. Now I'm getting pounded and I'm literally stuck down here and like, wow, that was 5 minutes of training. I just got wrecked. Well, guess you got to work on a couple things. So like you can really kind of test what you got to work on as well in rolling. So there's just so much. But typically, to answer the question, what does a average or a standard class look like? I would say is just, warm up, lesson / drilling, and then sparring or rolls. Okay. So awesome. Well, hey, I hope this video helped you all out. And go ahead and feel free to message the channel or comment if you have any questions or anything. If you want to go into further detail about anything else, I'm always open to taking questions. And if anyone's wondering anything, just like I had people wondering what their first class would even look like. So we started posting that beginner's class video, and we'll send you some more content. Very cool. Have a good one.